now. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, your major, where you run at, and then high school PRs if you get a chance.
Uh, Name's Joshua Justice Dick. I actually go by Justice now that I'm in college since I moved out of the house. Not for bad reason, but just a change. Major in finance. I run at the University of Kansas. I actually just transferred here. I left the University of Oklahoma for reasons we'll probably won't discuss, but now I'm here at the University of Kansas. I'm happy to be here, honestly.
Cool. Um, what area in Oklahoma are you from? Out of curiosity.
The northeast part of Oklahoma, it's a small town called Tahlequah. About you know where it's at. It's about an hour west of Fayetteville and about an hour east of Tulsa. And we're kind of, as I say, in the pretty part of Oklahoma, rather than the west side.
Yeah, I think everyone likes Tahlequah. That's there. So knowing you, and used to run with my guys at Big Home, but knowing you, something that I thought was interesting because I try to ask questions that are a little more individualized. You kept having a bad state meet race, but you kept coming back. A lot of times people have a bad race and they hang their head in shame and they phase out, and they did their 2 to 3 good seasons. But what motivated you the most in high school to keep training hard, even after in your earlier years in high school? What motivated you to keep training hard even after a bad experience at state?
I think a lot of what it was like I did have a good state meet my freshman year. I remember placing. I got on podium as a freshman in the 2 mile. I just barely snagged a sixth place spot and took the last medal. That was really huge and confidence boosting for me at that point. Uh, but the sophomore and junior years were absolutely just kind of like progressively got worse. Not like I completely tanked it, but my junior year just completely tanked the state race. And also my sophomore year, I didn't finish as well as I would have liked to in the mile and the 2 mile. Like it's really just a blur to me, like what happened during like that sophomore year. And junior year, we went through some stuff. You go in ranked like first in 4 events, including like a relay, and you walk out of state with 1 gold, which was the relay that you really weren't supposed to win. We actually were ranked second. I take that back. So ranked first individually in the 2 mile, the 800 in the mile, and then we were ranked second or third in the 4x8. And then when the state meet's all and done, I walk out with 1 gold in the 4x8 that we shouldn't have won. We actually got, in a way, the odds fell in our favor, and then a fourth place, I believe, in the 800. And then I think I got second to last in the mile, and I can't even tell you what I got in the 2 mile. But I do remember the mile being the last event of the weekend, and me walking out of the stadium with I think I put my hoodie on, my hood up, never took my spikes off, just walked on the concrete outside the stadium and just sat down and just it kind of just broke a little bit. Like, what just happened? What did I just go through? I put in all this work to for this. I wanted to quit running it. At that moment, I was like, why am I doing this? All this work, all this effort. This isn't what I worked so hard for.
Yeah.
Uh,
What was interesting is actually in that same state meet. You've mentioned it before. You might have to refresh my memory. I had the kid that won the 2 mile, Chris Lobaugh. He won the 2 mile. Was that why you started to kind of to seek a little bit just some supplemental support with coaching? Was it basically just Chris doing well? What was your driving factor? Because even though you were disheartened from the bad race, you still were just as motivated as ever. At least 2 weeks later, within 2 weeks, I mean, you had perseverance. You rallied really quick, really fast. What was that driving factor to get back on the horse and saying, all right, I'm going to win a state individual title? But yeah, what motivated you to kind of rally back?
I knew that after that meet, either I was going to hang up the shoes or I'm going to get so fit, find some way to do something that I will not lose. Like I was on the fence of either I'm just gonna stop running or if I jump into this, I'm gonna have to find something different. And I eventually like reached out to you, talking to old friend Zach Van Fleet and Chris Lowball, and I heard of your name a couple times, and like kind of like runners you've coached. I was like, okay, like he's got some success, like you do the same thing and expect a different result.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good saying.
and
Um,
that's really why I guess I found you and was like, listen, like I need something different.
yeah,
And luckily I had the support system like from coaches at my high school, like, yes, like, hey, let's find something like this. Let's do this.
yeah. No, I agree. It's kind of like that way for me in high school was I had a really good club coach, still a good club coach, named Mike Barber. Just good person, good coach, good environment. I think the biggest thing was kind of teaching, being a good person goes a long way in the long run. It's just something I've always held on to, and I appreciate the time that he gave me. So another thing that I wanted to ask, being a fellow Cherokee, what's some of the biggest hurdles? I mean, you're in probably the most common native area in Oklahoma. What's some of the big hurdles that you see outside looking in? Each person's dynamics is different, but what's some of the big hurdles that you see with Oklahoma natives? What do you think kind of sometimes gets in the way of them finding success?
Uh, Income, if I really had to say it, I think that gets in the way a lot because you've got these really talented kids across the state and across the nation, but like a lot of times the natives either have to get like jobs and they're also like 3, 4 sport athletes in high school. So when they're working and all day or when they're out of school and then they're also like playing 3 sports while in school hours, like they might not have the legs to go out and just blow up the competition. I mean, they might run like a little bit like better than average, but it's not enough to like really open eyes of like coaches across the nation, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree. I'd say developing routine in anything in life is usually the hardest thing. And, sometimes if you don't have that setup, you grow up quickly. Even Zach Van Fleet we're talking about, he still worked full time while being a full time student, while being a full time athlete. And, he grew up very quickly. He handled it like an adult, and he's a remarkable person. Um, but that's something I've seen that, and I'm a big believer in relatable role models is probably the strongest factor in the Native community for success. If another fellow Native is successful, it makes other Natives be successful. It's not really prevalent in other cultures. It's really prevalent with the Native community. I think every culture and every community has their negatives and positives, but the one positive Native community is one person's success has someone else be successful. And that was the thing both my colleges now, every single person was connected to some other runner of the team. You after one or two, the first one's coming, they're all connected in a positive, bigger mission statement kind of way. And that was something I saw with, one of our really good runners is he had 5 or 6 runners that wanted to come our way because he was successful. And that was something that I think it's so important for the Native community to have Native role models. And I think you're on the right path to help and kind of magnify and strengthen the Native community as well. So and kind of another question going hand in hand with one of the first things we were talking about. What if you had to zip back in the past to your earlier high school years, 4 or 5 years ago, what would be the best advice you could give to yourself with regular day life, and what would be the best advice you could give yourself as an athlete?
Shoot, I was so impressionable when I was a freshman in high school, that's for sure. Uh, if I had to go back and tell myself something, it'd be like, don't let outside forces or outside like worldly activities get you down, or like what other people do. Like you realize you can't control like can't control how people live their lives or what they do outside of practice. That was a big thing in the early stages of high school. Is like, hey, like some of these guys are out there like partying and drinking, and like, wow, we have a meet, we have regionals in a week. What are you doing?
Yeah.
We literally have a chance to win a state title and cross. Like, and you are jeopardizing that. And I couldn't wrap my head around that, you know. Not that it's okay now, but I realize that like sometimes people don't need to get belligerently drunk, but like if they just have a couple of drinks, like, and that's what like they need to keep their nerves down for what they do, like that's just what they need, I guess. I realize that that's not my life. I can't tell them how to live or not to live.
I,
Uh,
yeah. I get asked that a lot by my kids for drinking, and a lot of times I can mention it's like I'm not like anti-drinking per se. It just depends on what your background is, where you come from. A lot of my guys, they come from reservations, and the big thing is, does it serve a purpose? Has it ran in the family? There's a lot of things that come into play, and as I told them, I go, if it doesn't constitute a bigger purpose for you, no. But I had friends at OU where they could have a beer or two and it helped calm their nerves. And then it's something that stuck with me that not my coach, but another really good coach said, we were talking about this dynamic and issue, and he goes, they have coping mechanisms that they haven't learned how to go about it. It's like, so what do you mean? He goes, them having that outlet is a coping mechanism. And he goes, they need to find another way to cope is the short answer. And he goes, when you constantly think about a race, you get so emotionally exhausted. So he goes, that's why sometimes you can do things, even though it doesn't really help you be a better athlete, it still helps you not get so emotionally exhausted, which correlate over to being physically exhausted. So that was just something I thought was interesting. And then I started what I did, because I was such just a typical running nerd, still am, but I would go to movies the day before a big race and just get my mind off of it. And that's how I learned to cope. And I started running better when I was able to balance that mental energy a little bit more so. And that's just something I've seen with time. So what about, so you would say your advice with life is, don't be so caught up with what other people, are doing, and don't worry about it so much. But what would be your life for the young Josh for being as a runner? What would you give your advice, your younger self then?
oh my goodness. That's kind of a difficult question. It's very loaded because I feel like there's so much. There's no one thing I feel like I could say. But if there was, it might be along the lines of keep your head up, stay eager to learn. So I remember when I kind of like got through your program, I was working with your guys. I was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much I had no idea about when before I got there. I thought I knew things, and once I think it, I was like, I don't know anything about what actually running is. And then only took it to the next step when I got to college. So if I had to give my younger self some advice, and be, hey, keep your ears open. You're never going to know everything about running. You're never going to know the perfect way to race. You're never going to know the perfect splits to hit. Like every day is different, and keep your mouth shut and run. Like honestly, stop talking and listen for once.
Yeah. That's something I had a lot of trouble with growing up, was trying to absorb the information rather than put out the information. And it was a learning process. Even the bad experiences end up making you a better runner and better person if you choose to let them. So another question I had, Talcall probably is up there, but besides Talcall, because that's your hometown, what town do you think in Oklahoma with Native athletes has the most talent? The talent. So out of all the towns in Oklahoma, which area would you say, hey, they're untapped? They could have a lot of really great in particular runners, but athletes in general? What area would you say is still somewhat untapped, and maybe in the future they'll start utilizing the talent a little bit more so?
Honestly, I think the whole state of Oklahoma is untapped. But it's a little hard for me to pinpoint a town or school because like a lot of normally like native dominant schools aren't very big. And so like I was at a 5A high school while in high school. So like we mainly saw people like Bishop Kelly and like, I mean, granted Jinx wasn't 5A, but like we raced against 5A, 6A schools most of the time. And so we didn't see a lot of
Swollen,
one,
yeah.
yeah, 1A, 2A, 3A schools that were mostly like native kids. And, so like knowing that they're out there and you see Isai come out of Oklahoma, like, dude, I never heard of this kid. And he's just blown up the world and nobody knows about him because he's in 2A, 3A, whatever he is. So we didn't see a lot of them. So it's hard for me to pinpoint, but I know that Oklahoma is very untapped running wise. The talents, I think, is there across the state. It's just we need to get better coaches within the state to do things instead of asking the football coach, like, hey, you're ran cross country, and then put them in place of it. I think that's where Oklahoma's lacking. We don't have the support base, the knowledge base to produce these runners.
Yeah, and some might not like hearing it, but Oklahoma in general, they don't do as good a job finding coaches that actually want to coach. It's almost the good old boy system. If you're the basketball coach, they'll throw you the cross country. If you're a football coach, they'll throw you the track. And sometimes those football coaches make great track coaches, usually sprinters. Sometimes those basketball coaches make good running coaches. Sometimes the wrestling coach makes a good running coach. But I would say there's quite a few people that I went to college with where they wanted to coach in high school and they couldn't get a job. And they were professional, they had a degree, and they just didn't know the right people. So I think the frustrating part is it's not always about, hey, what's your resume look like? It's, kind of the good old boy system.
Right. In college, it's like that across the nation. It's kind of sad that people.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of, people don't care as much about running, whereas football, you got the one good thing with football, you got 2 or 3 years. If you don't do well, you're out. Find the guy that knows how to do it. I don't think that's common with running. So, they'll get a guy that meets the bare minimum, but they want to hire him, on a different basis of, who's going to do a better job. So,
and also football is more revenue generating than like cross country is.
Yeah. So there's not as need to get the results. I think in the long run, things will all change. I think, I guess I'm more progressive on believing that they'll desire more and more results. And there is some really good Oklahoma coaches out there, as you know. You got David Ryden out at Beer Creek does a fantastic job. Nora North has a great coach. Coach K, he does a fantastic job as well. So there's quite a few running programs. Jinx has their girls coach does a fantastic job. I actually ran with her in high school. So there is a handful of coaches out there, but I would say, that was something, the Zach Black, the guy that broke the state record. I think he said one time their workout was 6 times 150 meters per distance kid. Cause it's like, hey, you guys actually had practice today? He's like, we actually had practice. I was like, what'd you do? And he's like, 6 times 150. And it's like, well, that won't change a whole lot, but there's small adjustments. Here's what you got. And I remember thinking later, it's like, that's it. And, something that caught my attention why I asked that question was, I told this young man, it's like, yeah, you're really talented. And in 7 months, he went from, just being top 5 at state for small classification to the breaking the state record in 7 months. And, it's just mentioned what I asked you, talent. And he goes, yeah, there's 2 kids older than me in my high school, kind of a small high school, that were more talented than I was. I just remember thinking, 2 untapped kids that have potential to break state records, and thinking, there's a lot of talent out there, just maybe not the right structure or direction of it. So I don't know. It's always a interesting running nerd thought, is thinking about, some of the talent out there and seeing it get utilized. It'd be pretty neat. But cool. Well, that's mostly everything for the interview. I got one more thing. I lied, but what about a quote? Do you have any quotes that you like that you want to sign off with, or anything like that, or you don't have anything that comes to mind?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Now I went blank. Oh man, stay classy, man. That's all
Yeah,
I got, I guess.
cool. Awesome. Well, I'll catch you later, brother. Good talking
Oh,
with you.
good
And
to see
then, yeah, I was telling you maybe in a month or two we'll do another follow-up interview, but I'll
That'd be
catch you
great.
in the meeting,
Good
brother.
seeing you. Have a good one.